Hey there, Earthbound fans, and welcome to another video where I dissect the game and come up with fun little quirks that we can talk about. This video is piggybacking off my last one where I talked about a challenge you could do. That challenge was the buy the Onet house before leaving Onet. This video is going to talk about my top 5 challenges that you can find in the game of Earthbound. There's also a couple honorable mentions that I'm going to throw in there. Why mess around? Let's go talk about them. I'm going to try my best to address 4 bullet points per each challenge. And they're going to be what the actual challenge is, how you accomplish it, some tricks you might need to get there quickest, and the 4th segment is what I'm calling why it sucks. And we're going to talk about why it sucks. Number 5. The 5th place challenge I like to talk about is the T-Rex Bat Challenge. When you first play as Jeff and you leave the boarding school, the very first general store you come to sells a baseball bat for just around $700. So the challenge itself says that you should purchase that bat before you advance in Jeff's storyline. And so the way to accomplish this specific challenge is to fight a bunch of enemies and accumulate all that money. What you can also do, and luckily you're given a whole bunch of items inside the boarding school, and there's another item that Jeff fixes that you can sell for a hefty $250, I believe. Almost half of the amount of money you need you can accumulate by selling items, and the other half would be from grinding. Do your best in fighting your own net enemies up until you're about level 5, and then you can start checking on those billy goats a little bit. Which brings me to tip number 2, save as much as you can and restore your health in that tent that's right there around the corner. And why it sucks is because it's a lot of grinding and it's tedious. But it's a good thing too because you grind a lot and you level up. It's beautiful. Number 4. The 4th place challenge I chose for this specific video is the buying the Onet house before leaving Onet challenge. Now you can click here. My most recent video was breaking down what the steps you take that goes into buying that house. But essentially there's a house on the outskirts of Onet that costs you $7,500 to buy. And so the goal is, of course, you do a bunch of grinding, you fight a lot of enemies, you sell items along the way, just like the T-Rex Bat Challenge, and then you spend that money in the house. And $7,500 takes a awful long time to get. I know when I played through, I had that money at level 20. So that's 20 levels worth of grinding. Some tips I can give you though is you want to fight your first round enemies. Fight those first since you're level 4 or 5 or so, and then attack those sharks. And make sure you're saving and recovering from home as much as you can. You want to save all that money. Don't go to a hotel. It takes forever to do. It'll take you 3 hours. And if you're on an emulator and you're going fast and yeah. Number 3, the speed run challenge. Now, in all honesty, there are several speed runs you can do. The most famous one, or the most typical one that you would do if you're going to start speed running, is to accomplish the defeat of Gygus as quick as possible. But there is a 100% run. There's one where you have to hit all the photos. There's another one called the Pajama Run, where you stay in a single set of pajamas that you start the game with, and through manipulating the overworld map, you beat the game in your pajamas. Suggestions on how to accomplish it: it's practice. It's run through the game a dozen times, and if you think you're used to the game, run through it a million more, because it's one of those things where it literally comes down to seconds count. And why does it suck? Because you will be playing it a lot, and the game is awesome, so it's not to put down the experience you'll have, but to accomplish such an incredible thing like that, you need to have some patience, let me tell you that. Number 2, the 2nd place rank goes to the 1 out of 128 item collect challenge. And essentially what this challenge comes down to is the enemies in the game, a certain number of them, spawn items. And some items are 1-to-1, which means that every one enemy you fight, you have one chance of getting it, right? There are some that are 1-to-10, so every 10 enemies, one of those enemies will give you it. And there's some, this one, or 1 out of 128, so every time you fight 128 of these specific enemies, the odds are that one will give you the item in question. Well, I'll put a list up here so you can actually see what they are. But the fun part is there's a couple that'll give you weapons specific to characters that you cannot buy. No matter how much money you've accumulated in the game, no matter how many stores you found or how many vendors you run into, the only way of getting those weapons are through the 1 out of 128 challenge. And it's a good challenge too, because there are a total of 25 enemies in the game out of the 100 or so that are participating in this 1 out of 128 challenge. Tips I can give you is camp out, and again, Grind like there's no tomorrow. It's a fun experience, but like anything, the downside is gotta invest that time. Now, before I do the number one pick on this list, I'm going to run through some honorable mentions, and luckily I left you with a bunch. There are 10 honorable mentions that I'm going to be talking about in no particular order. First one is the all photos run, and it's just as self-explanatory as it sounds. There are 32 photos that can be taken during the duration of the game. Some of them are avoidable, some are unavoidable, and the goal is to get every one of those 32 pictures taken. And as at the very end of the game during the credits, these photos play, and to have them all is kind of the most fulfilling ending to such a great game. The next honorable mention is my personal favorite, keep Paula's bear alive until the end of the game. If you remember when you rescue Paula from the shack in Peaceful Rest Valley, she's equipped with a teddy bear. The teddy bear, of course, absorbs damages from enemies first before it attacks your party. If you drop it off with Escargot Express, the health resets. The challenge itself says that you, while the bear is equipped in your inventory, every battle you do has to have the bear survive until defeating Gygas, until she can return to her preschool with her stuffed bear. I like that one. It's quirky. Number 3 on the honorable mentions list is defeat Belch without using fly honey. Number 4 in the honorable mentions is something that I think this one cracked me up, so I put it on the list. It's called the Snail Killer Challenge, and it says that you cannot use a healing item unless there's salt on it, because salt kills snails. Get it? If you want to use a bread roll or whatever, you have those additive packets. You got to throw some salt on it. Now, number 5 on the honorable mentions is you have to use payphones only. Payphones are the only way to save your game, but that means no hotels, mama's house, desert shack. You know what I mean? That's strictly, we're in general stores and we're in malls, I think. Or the Dungeon Man is a payphone. Number 6 in the honorable mentions is if anybody dies during battle, you have to restart. That challenge is all in the title. All players that you have at one time have to live for the duration of your battle. Number 7 and number 8, we're going to throw a dash between those. Number 7 is you can't use PSI to heal your party. And number 8 is you can only use PSI to heal your party, which means, you know what it means? It's clear. I'd say not using PSI healing or life up is clearly more difficult, but both a challenge. Number 9 in the honorable mention is each player can only carry 7 items in their inventory. That means that if you choose to use all 4 equip items, you have only 3 random items to use. That could be an offensive, like a bomb or a bottle rocket. It could be a life noodles or a hamburger. And the 10th honorable mention, again in no particular order, is that Jeff must use and obtain all of his repair items. They're always fixed items. So no bottle rockets, no yo-yos, nothing like that. Jeff has to use the only items that he's fixed. We'll call that the Genius Challenge. And finally, the moment we've all been waiting for, number 1, the Sword of King Challenge. Everybody knows the challenge, and the challenge is, for those who don't, I don't want to discriminate, is there's one part, you go below the base, and there's Starman Juniors, goes to Starman, Starman Supers, and you finally end up at the Starman Deluxe, and in that time, you're in their underground base. Well, when you fight Starman Supers, those golden ones, there's a 1 out of 128 chance that they're going to drop the Sword of Kings, which brings me to tips. The tips are level up. What I looked up online is they suggested being at level 62 or higher. I'm going to say 65 to 68. And just camp out in that area. Be used to 1-2 hours. If you've done it personally, if you've gone through, what's been the longest time that it's taken you to get the Sword of Kings? It's got to be phenomenal. It sucks because it takes so gosh dang long. Alright guys, so that concludes the list of my top 5 with some honorable mentions. Challenges in the game of Earthbound. I intend to, one of my next videos is to go through the 1 out of 128 challenge. I want to go through each individual item, where to find them, what enemies to fight, and what the item you receive does. So that'll be my next video, because that's such an extensive thing. You saw the list. It's huge. But here's my call to action. I want you guys in the comments to let me know if you've done these challenges. Do you like these challenges? Do you have challenges of your own? Because maybe my future video I'll go through and find a specific challenge that I want to do and kind of do a run of it or do a breakdown of how I feel. Please consider subscribing if you haven't so far. If you like my Earthbound videos, I sure as hell like making them. I love the game, and I'd like an audience around this so we can talk about it. So very much appreciated all the time you spent on this video. I assume it's pushing
10
minutes, so that's
10
your life that you spent with me. So I appreciate that we came together as pals. Like always, I'll see you next time. Later days.